Beth, are you able to admit everyone?
Yep, I can, and I will do so right now.
Good afternoon, all, and welcome to the information session from MyLife Studio. My name is J.M. Conway, and I work here at the University of Chicago Graham School. We are so happy to have you here with us today to hear more about this upcoming spring program. I'm going to start us off by giving a little overview of what we'll do today, and then I will kick things over to the Dean of the Graham School to extend his welcomes to you all. You'll hear and see from Seth Green shortly. Then we will have Charlie Newell, who is an MLS guide and former artistic director over at the Court Theater, will introduce our student speaker for today, who is Daniel Ash, who's currently the president of the Field Foundation. Um, he'll chat with us a little bit about his experience with the MyLife Studio curriculum, and there will be some time for you to engage with him in conversation about that experience. We'll then hear from Harry Davis on aspirational characters, which is a core concept in the studio. Nancy Tennant will follow, who is also a MyLife Studio guide and booth professor, to share a little bit of an overview of the studio, and then I will wrap us up with some details and application information, and then we'll save some time for your questions. Once again, we are so happy that you decided to join us today, and I'll kick things over to Seth Green.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Conway, and thank you for your stewardship of the launch of this new program. And I just want to say, on behalf of the school and the university, how excited we are about My Life Studio and how grateful we are to the extraordinary instructors who have put it together. I'll mention three aspects that I hope you'll hear more about in the presentation that follows that particularly excite me about MLS. The first is that this is truly interdisciplinary. It brings together the insights of our greatest leadership scholar in the university's history, Harry Davis, a true innovator in business and beyond, as well as an extraordinary coach, Nancy Tennant, and one of the true visionaries in artistic direction, Charlie Newell. And it brings together these disciplines. And my second major point of excitement to help you to better understand yourself. One of the core tenets of our approach to lifelong learning is we believe inquiry is about better understanding the world and in the process, better knowing oneself. And one of the beauties of My Life Studio is that it takes what is often a big challenge for people, which is how to know yourself, especially in midlife, especially in moments of transition where you may be in a flux between characters because of what's happening around you or inside of you. And it actually creates an intellectual atmosphere that brings together all of these disciplines to allow you to look in the mirror and better understand yourself. And then the final part I want to talk about is how it really helps you to begin planning for the future. And one of the things that we really believe in at the Graham School is the power of experiential learning. And when Charlie, Nancy, and Harry were telling me about their approach, there is deep intellectual rigor here. There's also a lot of fun and rehearsal here. So that just like an actor on stage, you are trying on different potential futures and then having the chance to act them out. And I just think that that approach is such a great way to think about learning, especially at this moment of transition. And so, on many counts, we are thrilled about this new program. We are incredibly grateful to the three-person team who is putting it together. And with that, I will just welcome you to our snowy university, which I know is the next slide here. It is true that everywhere has snow right now, even Dallas. So That may not be totally unique, but there's a special way in which it covers Hyde Park that makes it especially beautiful on our historic buildings. And with that, I will just say on the next slide, you can see we have three of the true game-changing leaders here at the university who are partnering and teaching this, each with different backgrounds that are storied in their own right and coming together to create a whole that is even greater. And with that, I will turn it over to one of those instructors, Charlie Newell, who will introduce Daniel Ash, who I've admired for a long time and didn't know until recently had actually gone through a program like this with Harry and Charlie and had been positively changed by it. And knowing that made me even more excited because if it had that influence on him, I can only imagine the potential of this program as it comes to more learners. With that, Charlie, let me turn it over to you.
Thank you, Seth. On behalf of Harry and Nancy, want to thank you, J.M. Conway and Seth, but most especially, I want to just say how much joy I feel seeing Daniel Ash on this call with us, on this Zoom with us, because I don't know if you recall, Daniel, I certainly do. There was a pilot in 2019 that you were part of that contained much of the MyLife Studio curriculum. And here we are 6 years later, and we were thinking, well, who would be the best person to speak about their experience? And all three of us went, maybe Daniel Ash might join us. So thank you so much for joining, because as people will hear you tell your story about a major transition into a new role. But before I ask you to tell your wonderful story, I must read just briefly, Daniel, if it's okay, a little bit about you and your bio. Daniel Ash is president of the Field Foundation. There's a story there, which we'll hear, which is a private and independent foundation that supports community power building in Chicago. Through the strategic grant making that the Field Foundation does, it collaborates with funding partners to distribute $11 million annually to nonprofit organizations and leaders, focusing primarily on the city's South Side and West Side. Daniel is also, prior to becoming the Field Foundation's president, he was associate vice president of the Community Impact for Chicago Community Trust. Also at the trust, he served as the chief marketing officer with responsibility for directing brand strategy and communications. And before the trust, he spent 10 years as vice president of Chicago Public Media and was a key voice in shaping its overall strategic focus. In other words, this is a man who is a leader in philanthropy in Chicago, is one of the most noted leaders in philanthropy, and he's won a whole bunch of awards for that as well. So welcome, Daniel. So glad you're here. I'm going to pass it to you, but basically to ask you to share with everyone that's on this call about your experience and what you learned from something that we did back in 2019 and how that has affected your life and your career.
Well, thank you, Charlie, and Harry, Nancy, Seth. I'm actually really honored that you would invite me to talk about such an important experience in my life, particularly in my professional life. I think it's important to begin, as they say, at the beginning, and acknowledge that when I was recruited to join what was then called the Civic Actor Studio, I I didn't respond straight away because we all get busy, we have meetings, you have obligations, and the idea of taking 3 days, 4 days, I think it was at the time, away from work and showing up somewhere to do something you never heard of before is a hard ask. And then the only reason why I said yes is because the person, Joni Friedman, who was organizing the studio, the Civic Actor Studio, was a friend and a wonderful person. And I reluctantly said yes. That reluctant yes became a bunch of gratitude, even while I was experiencing that first pilot. And again, I didn't even know it was truly a pilot because it just felt so on point to me. So let me sort of take you back to sort of where I was. And particularly as I entered the studio. I was a professional leader that showed up in a very consistent way for now, nearly 30 years. Um, Being a first generation college student who entered the world of work, I had adopted a persona that I felt would serve me well in my career, and it did. I'm also a University of Chicago grad, so I had become that very analytical thinker that people could trust. And I was very serious about the work that occupied my life. And there's nothing wrong with any of that. But as I became that trusted, respected, analytical leader and collaborator, I had sort of kept a significant part of myself, as Harry taught me to say, and Charlie taught me to say, upstage. Like I was never truly my full self. There's a term people use in the world like code switching, right? Like who are you in certain environments? And do you allow yourself to be your full self? And I quickly sort of in the moment of entering the studio realized I had sort of gotten so good at being Daniel the professional that I had almost forgotten about these other personas that were important to me. So for example, to give you a sense of like these characters or these personas that I wanted to sort of rediscover. Um, a few of them were Daniel the storyteller, Daniel the comedian or person who wishes he were a comedian. Um, the Daniel is the good listener, right? Sometimes as leaders, you forget how important listening is because you're asked to talk so much, right? And speak so much. And so I'm going back to that first experience because, and I want to set the scene for you. Like we were in a black box studio, a number of leaders here on the South Side of Chicago from different disciplines, different sectors. But the one thing we shared was community, like being connected to the South Side. And we were reading Antigone, and we have these wonderful thought leaders, Harry and Charlie, and some of their colleagues, helping us understand how these characters showed up inside us. I'd never been in that experience, and I've gone to some very artsy schools like Oberlin, where I spent a lot of time with artists. But the idea of me being in the studio and me being encouraged to act out scenes while tapping into these other characters that I had sort of kept at bay, particularly in my professional life. It was actually a profound experience, but it also was very, at the beginning, nerve-wracking. It was scary. The idea of being a known leader and testing a different character, a different archetype in front of people um, is not an easy thing. But we all, as a cohort, sort of threw ourselves into the risk, threw ourselves into the anxiety, and then we realized we were all holding something back in our civic lives, right, in our public lives. Um, and so we had the opportunity to identify those characters and then try to bring them back downstage in real scenarios that would apply to our day-to-day sort of world. So fast forward, I had this amazing experience in 2019. I was away from the office for a few days. People were like, where were you? And I was just like, oh, I was in a black box with other folks who want to change and change Chicago for the better and improve conditions in these neighborhoods. Um, and so I was so connected that I periodically would sort of be brought back into the community that experienced the Civic Actor Studio. And it just so happened that the day before I was to do my final presentation to the search committee for the role I was recruited for, I had the opportunity to sit with Harry, with Charlie, and some of the others who were facilitating a studio. And I was reminded that it's okay, quite frankly, to rehearse. And it's okay, Daniel, even when you're sort of competing for a fairly high profile position here in Chicago, to bring those characters that you had accessed in that initial pilot, bring them back downstage, bring them into the interview. And I was fully prepared for this presentation for those who want to know the color, I was at the Northern Trust Bank. My board chairs at the time was vice chairman of Northern Trust Bank. So you're in a very intimidating space. And I had fully prepared myself to come in there and be that analytical, deep strategic thinker was the foundation of my reputation. But I was reminded at the studio the day before, you may want to consider bringing that storyteller downstage. You may want to consider bringing those other characters that are in you downstage, because it is those characters that will differentiate you in a way that 10 years earlier, 20 years earlier, I would have never considered. And quite frankly, I would have never thought of them as a differentiator. I mean, I would have thought of those characters as potentially undermining my ability to be seen as a leader. So I walk out of that studio, and I didn't rehearse it actually in that moment because there were other students in this class, but just being in the community inspired me to go back and tap into what I learned in 2019. And so I walk out of that room, I rework my presentation, I show up the next morning, and I present. Um, I mean, you obviously know it went well, but to give you a sense of how well it went, I walked to, I walked out of Northern Trust Bank right downtown in the financial district here in Chicago, and walked 2 blocks toward my office at the time at the Chicago Community Trust, and I got the call from the search consultant that it's yours if you want it. And I can't help but recognize the fact that it was me using all of me, all of those characters to show up in that moment as both the strategist, the analyst, the leader, but he's also someone who can show up in community and be himself and be natural. And I know it's selfish to say this or arrogant to say it, but be a good storyteller, be funny, be approachable. So I want to make clear that at the beginning of this, I would have never considered doing this because I wasn't taught to do the things that folks in the theater do. But again, a friend pulled me into it, and you never know those blessings that are going to emerge until you're in it. And then going through the experience from that point onward, I've been able to, on a daily basis, practice the craft, right? Which is basically, practice being comfortable being me, right? And I know that sounds uncanny and unorthodox, but it's something that as leaders, we all have to do. Whether you're in a moment of a transition or whether your early stage career, I think that would be the best when you get comfortable early stage so you can have a full life, professional life where you're sharpening the skill set. But it's something that I will never let go of. The idea of being all of me when appropriate, rehearsing with others in a way that builds trust, and then bringing all of that learning into my professional life and personal life, allowing them to sort of sit in a way that's fully intersectional. Charlie, I'll stop there because I want to give you time to probe if you want me to explore other areas of the experience.
Well, I guess I just want to offer, Daniel, thank you so much. That was fabulous storytelling, very inspiring. And I guess just to check in with you, Daniel, so that the folks listening really understand, when you just defined your persona, the sort of go-to that has been such a part of your success, but then you spoke about being storyteller, comedian, good listener. Those were things, if I recall correctly, those were things that were true and authentic to who you are. You just hadn't been bringing them forward to trust and take the risk to lean into it. In other words, the process that Harry, Nancy, and I have been doing in lots of different iterations is not about us telling people what character they should do, but rather what is the authentic part that is true for you. Do I have that right from your experience?
Yeah, absolutely right. And quite frankly, I think what the point I think is important, while these characters are authentic to me, I felt that it was important to suppress parts of my natural voice because I wanted to be taken seriously. And
Mhm.
part of it is, we all have our baggage, right? We all have, but again, I remember, and this is very personal, but I remember being a first year student at Oberlin College, and I came out of a town, Youngstown, Ohio, where I thought I was top of the class. I thought I was fully prepared, and I go into an environment like that, and I realized I wasn't, and I felt I had to catch up and catch up fast, meaning academically, using my voice and being part of this community. And so the the more natural parts of my persona I let go because I wanted to be taken seriously. And I feel that those early experiences in college and even my early experience in grad school at the University of Chicago, while I loved those experiences and they had huge impact on me, I had limited what others, particularly in my professional life, would see of me and what they would hear from me. So, and because I felt I needed to, in order to survive, I had to be one version of myself. And then as I moved along my leadership journey and having an experience like this in 2019, right, where I'm being, quite frankly, like hounded by, again, a good friend, but I'm getting all these emails, we're trying to do this, we want to test this idea, what is it? And then I say yes, and I join, and I realize this is an opportunity to unlock versions of me that particularly in my professional life, that I had just sort of sealed away. That journey led to experiences at the trust and experience with the community that ultimately, in a very profound way, actually helped me show up for my current board in a way that again made me stand out. That if I go back in time, I would have never allowed myself to be as relaxed and comfortable and authentically me in an interview to be the president and CEO of a legacy foundation here in Chicago. I would have been Daniel, the graduate of University of Chicago. I'd have been Daniel, the strategist. And I can still be that, right? So that's the thing that Charlie, you and Aries are very good at. You can manage your characters, right? Like if you can get comfortable bringing a certain character downstage, telling a certain and pushing one character like slightly off stage and then bringing that character back, learning how to have that type of emotional dexterity is actually heightened uh, my ability to lead this organization and then be present as a civic leader. Um, Again, it may seem like I'm speaking in hyperbole, but this is very, again, personal. Knowing how to build that dexterity requires practice and rehearsal. And then the other big learning was finding a place like the Civic Actor Studio where you can be comfortable doing that. And even in the course, I mean, I'm in my office right now, but in the context of my staff, I try to manufacture that type of studio environment for us, even as we prepare for board meetings, as we prepare for sort of big public announcements. Like it's okay to do it in a way that is actually enriching for us individually, beneficial collectively, and as we like to say with the Civic Action Studio, and this happens here in my staff, it becomes such methods allow you to accelerate the trust building that's so critical to any organization. Be it a foundation, be it a business, be it a nonprofit, be it a university setting. the key to getting things done is building as much trust as you can among your colleagues, and then allowing that trust to actually impact the work. And oftentimes it doesn't happen, in my opinion, in a retreat, where you go and do trust falls. It actually happens with work like, no disrespect, Harry, the trust falls and all that other stuff. But but I actually think this is a much more valuable tool that if leaders can adapt in their own personal life and in their own professional journey, they can also bring it into the organizations that they actually lead.
Right.
Mhm.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Daniel. I'm going to now pass it on to Harry. Harry, you good?
I'm good. Yes.
Yeah.
You know, Daniel was listed as the student. I would say I feel more like the student, and he's the professor in terms of kind of takeaways from that story. So thank you so much, Daniel. Let me begin by saying that the way you play the different roles in your life really depends in many ways on how you show up with others. And as the result, what they see and how they feel from what you display. And I think those last words are really important. It's what other people see and how they feel from what you display, because leadership and life, I think, is fundamentally very interpersonal. You also probably show up differently in some ways, depending upon who's in the audience and the role that you happen to be in at that moment. For example, a scientist we worked with some years ago began to display more of her delegator in the lab with really great success. But the same approach didn't work well with her two teenage sons when she tried to bring that home. She had to go at it differently. It's also necessary to change how we show up at different times in our lives. We worked with somebody who made a difficult transition from a company that was very hierarchical to one that was very team-oriented. And he described having to change from being seen as very confident, as he said, almost arrogant, to the other company that required genuine humility. He said, I wish I had known that so I didn't have to try to recover from that, given all the damage I did in the first few months there. So it's clear that the challenge of being agile doesn't fit with the notion of one size or one persona, as Daniel was mentioning, that fits all that you need. An essential tool for MyLife Studio is drawn from the performing arts. People have found the visual that we use of seeing themselves on one stage in front of an audience to be really insightful and also practical. Great actors are great because they perform authentically after many rehearsals and actual performances to try things out. And both of these will be a part of this course. It's essential for actors to display characters that link intentions to behaviors that others will see. For example, a character that we might call the taskmaster could show a clear focus, listen intently, and give timely feedback. In this program, we're going to ask everyone to assess how you are currently setting your stage in a given role, and more importantly, how you might want to reset that stage with some new characters to better connect with that audience. We'll help people realize that there aren't any inherently good or bad characters. In some situations, for example, the impatient one would be useful to display when a deadline was not an option, but non-negotiable. Whereas in other situations that require more discussion, impatience is not very useful. We'll also encourage people to give their own names to characters so as to make them more personal and memorable. People enjoy, we found, generating names that are meaningful to them, such as the 2-year-old, somebody recently, the Doctor Direct, the Energizer Bunny, or names from movies or fiction. One person identified a role model named Tom who didn't shy away from telling the truth and projecting needed firmness. When a situation required a tough conversation, this person regularly displayed his Tom. Many who attend our classes are somewhat surprised when they realize that they actually have a connection with more characters than are currently on their stage. These are often hidden for various reasons, or they were characters that they lost touch with from earlier in their life, or just characters that they wished could be displayed but haven't yet. So given these observations, we thought it might be useful to collect some aspirational characters from those of you here today. Let me do this by asking all of you a question. What's one aspirational character that you would like to work on within a role in your life? Let me say that again. What's one aspirational character that you would like to work on within a role in your life? Chat is now open, so please enter that character's name and why this character is important for you in just one or two short sentences. And once you've done that, we'll all take a look at what we see. And I should say that there's no right or wrong answer in this exercise. So if the chat is available, go ahead and add your character. And a sentence or two as to why that's important for you to begin to think about adding. Mistakes. Mentor. I think we always learn so much from other people, and that's one of the things that we will continue to do in the Civic Actor Studio and in the MyLife Studio. Alleged integrated leader. These are great. Somebody uses a personal name. Writer. Passion. It's really interesting looking at the descriptors of these characters in terms of why they're important. Meryl Streep. Meryl Streep is a good example of something from the movies. One of the things that's so interesting about her is every role she plays is very authentic because she connects it in some ways to who she is. Let me ask, since Charlie and Daniel have been there, would any of you like to make any comments about what you're seeing from what's being suggested here in terms of beginning thoughts about an aspirational character?
Reading the chat, Harry, and everyone who's been contributing, just so inspiring. And particularly, I'm here seeing in the description, who is the audience that you want to bring that character to? So that's thrilling.
Yeah, absolutely. The stronger the motivation and the clarity of what is it that I want them to see and feel, that's really very helpful in really focusing on what you need to focus on. Any other thoughts? I'm also struck at how different these are, because as one of the things that we try to work on is that everyone is dealing with different issues. I think so many of the issues that relate to how we show up really is very personal. And rather than checking a box or thinking about, well, these are the 7 characters that are going to make me successful, that's really not true. It really depends on who you are, where you are, and what your objectives are. So I want to thank all of you for sharing these. That's very helpful. And let me turn this over to Nancy, who will give you a little bit more information about what will actually happen in MyLife Studio.
Thank you, Harry. Thank you, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I woke up this morning and I had a dream last night. This is hand to God about a recurring dream I've had throughout my life. I only have one recurring dream. I've had it for over 30 years. And it comes out like this. It's I'm in my home. It's the dream's vision of what my home is. It's not my actual home. I've lived there a long time. And I start walking around and I discover rooms I didn't know existed. And these rooms, depending on what's happening in my life at the time, they vary. Sometimes they're happy rooms, sometimes they're not. Sometimes they hold things that I don't want to work on or I'm regretting. Sometimes they hold secrets I don't want to deal with. Some of them even hold the wonders of my life, maybe people or things that I've experienced. And then the dream ends there. And then later I have it again. And after much reflection, I began to realize that this dream really is about self-discovery and my hidden potential to remodel, if you will, my life. And that's a lot of what MyLife Studio is. It's not about a home necessarily, but Conway, if you would put the slide up that has the first picture of MyLife Studio. MyLife Studio is really deeply personal about this inner space, and it's a container for how we can move forward in personal growth that is, as Harry said, unique to us. And why the dream never gives me any inkling of how to work on these things, MyLife Studio does. And so I just want to look at the picture for a second. There are 5 distinct areas in this picture. And each is designed to help us uncover a hidden or an underutilized part of ourselves. Let's say a character that we want to bring more fully into the world in the way we want to show up. At the top of the image, you can see by the windows 2 really important spaces. One of them is, well, both of them are coordinates, if you will, things that kind of help orient you to where you're going and where you're coming from. The first one is the mirror over in the corner. That represents our core self. Our core self is about our values, our identity, and our sense of purpose in life. And this mirror coordinate is going to help us stay grounded and authentic as we start to try on new characters and bring them downstage. The other side has a telescope and it's pointed up at the sky, and it's kind of our true north or our North Star. It's our best self. And it's how we're trying to move toward that best self over a lifetime. And so it's the second coordinate that gives us direction. And if you look over it to the left of the design, there's kind of a work table. That's our design space. That's where we would find our emerging self. That's where we might sit down and say, okay, which characters do I really want to bring forward? And what qualities might be important? And how might I demonstrate that with others? At the center of the room is a really inviting space. It's got some nice chairs, some coffee cups, a coffee table. That's our rehearsal space. That's our exploring self. That's where we actually practice with ourselves and with others. And we actually come in and think about reflection on what we've done. And finally, if you look over to the right, it's kind of hard to see at first, but there's a door there. And we begin to wonder what's on the other side of that door. It's both unsettling and exciting at once. And once you realize that beyond the door is the real world, where you will go out and experiment and take risks and try things and interact with others, it becomes kind of a stepping stone, if you will, on your way to your best self. So when you come to the MyLife Studio workshop, we're going to explore all 5 of these spaces. In real time, there's an action loop that we'll spend most of our time on, and it's around the design space, the rehearsal space, and the door. What are the characters we want to work on? Rehearsing and practicing those, going out the door in the real world and actually trying them with experiments, coming back through the door, sitting there at the rehearsal space and thinking, how did it go? And then going back to that workspace, let me rethink what I want to do next. So in the 5 weeks of MyLife Studio, we'll progress through all of these, identifying new characters and being able to learn how to train them, to make them available and helpful to you when you need them most. And so in sum, I would say MyLife Studio really is about 2 words. The words would be not yet. It's not about a thing, it's about a mindset. I'm not the curious one yet. I'm not Ted Lasso yet. Daniel isn't the storyteller yet, but we're becoming and we're working on it. And that mindset's paired with the studio skills that we're going to give you is how personal change happens. It's where you might think about where you can remodel your life as well. So Conway, if you would go to one more. This is the 5 weeks over time. And in that 5 weeks, we're going to look at these 5 spaces, these 5 selves, and we're going to use discussion and breakouts and a lot of hands-on work and in a rehearsal space that we will set up. We have some homework, but the key homework we're going to ask you to do is go out and actually experiment with these characters. You also will have an opportunity to have virtual coaching, 2 opportunities in the 2 weeks. And so with that, that's kind of a high level view. I'm going to turn it back to you, Conway.
Thank you, Nancy. So now that we've heard from our instructors and Daniel, our guest, I want to just wrap up here with a few bits of information about the course. We would love to have you join us. So again, the studio is cohort-based. It's an experimental learning model that's designed to support you navigate life's turning points. So it's going to use a blend of reflective inquiry, coached rehearsals, real life practice, and then you'll explore and enable ways to show up with authenticity, confidence, in the moments that matter most to you. This is going to be a hybrid format. So the class sessions will meet in person Mondays, 12:30 to 3:30 p.m. This is will be in Chicago, so Central Time. Those Monday courses will be in person where you'll get to gather with the instructors and the rest of your course participants for in-depth workshops, explorations, time to be in rehearsal. And then you'll also have optional virtual coaching where you can have time with the instructors to really refine the characters that you're working on and talk through the homework together. The course is 5 weeks and it will start in April 13th, 2026 and end May 11th. To be admitted into the studio, you will be asked to complete an application, which includes 3 short questions. Those questions are here. So we'll ask you to reflect on the course description and let us know what feels exciting, what feels challenging, or what gives you pause. We'll ask you to identify a critical relationship where you need to engage differently. So this is slightly similar to the activity we did today, where you're thinking about an area or persona or character of your life where you want to do a little workshopping and play and exploration. And then we'll ask for you to describe an upcoming transition in your life where you want to express yourself in new and compelling ways. So again, those of you who are here have a little leg up in terms of thinking through some of these questions. The application is open now, and that early application deadline is February 6th. If you apply by February 6th, we'll be able to respond and let you know in a much more timelier way that you have been accepted into the program. And then we can start with the auditions. And the auditions, I wonder if Nancy or Charlie or Harry, you want to just give a little window into what the audition is, because it's not your typical idea of what an audition might be.
Charlie, given your theater background, why don't you explain?
Well, I mean, so much of what I'm bringing to all of this is 30 some years of being in rehearsal rooms with actors. But when we proposed, hey, what if we have an audition for this class? And we went, oh my gosh, that's so different and unique. And essentially, as Conway, you described, these questions that we ask people to consider in doing the application. What's exciting? And share with us sort of where you're at and what might be an aspirational character that you've been thinking about since this conversation. I'm also very struck by this idea that you want to explore a different relationship and engage very differently, and that can be with one person or a group of people or otherwise, just to help us support you in as you're thinking about the work you want to do. And then the last one, which I I must acknowledge Nancy's beautiful language with here, which is if you've got an idea about a transition, either you know of or that you hope for in your life, how do you want to express yourself in a new and compelling way for the things that matter most to you? And I just love that sense of audition. And in other words, it's not like what you might think is stereotypical for actors auditioning. This is about you bringing your aspiration of where your life is and how we can support you as the guides through the 5 weeks of the class.
Thanks so much, Charlie. Just a couple of other points here before we go into a formal Q&A portion where we want to hear from you all. So if you have questions that you know you want to be asked, please do put those in the chat, and then we will bring up our guests for today and our instructors for today and forward those questions along to them. So just a couple of more things. The program cost is $1,995. And please do let us know. There is a space in the application where you can indicate if you may want to be considered for scholarship to cover a portion of the class fee. So you can let us know that in the application. I'm going to stop the share now, and then I see that we have some questions that may be in the chat here. Let me, in the meantime, just spotlight these videos so that you can see us when we're answering your questions. Okay, great. So we have some questions. Will the in-person component be at the U of Chicago Hyde Park campus, I can take that. We will actually be downtown, just off the Chicago River at the University of Chicago Gleacher Center. So that is where the course will be held in person. And then the coaching sessions will be virtual sessions where you can take where it's best and convenient for you. There's a question here about how many times the program runs. This will be our first time running this iteration of the course through the Graham School. We're obviously hoping that it will do well and be successful. And after this first run of the course, we will then see if there's appetite for more and hopefully be able to offer it at a regular clip. How often does the class meet? The class meets once a week for 5 weeks during the duration of the course. And then we'll have those virtual coaching sessions. And then I know that the instructional team is also excited to potentially have some social opportunities for you all to get to know each other and grow as a cohort as well during that 5-week time.
Yeah, I would just add to that we're hoping, given our experience in the past, that given that you will get to know each other and feel very comfortable expressing what you're working on without feeling that you're going to be judged or evaluated, that we really hope that some members of each group will stay together and find ways to continue to interact with one another. Because this work doesn't happen and get everything finished. I think I'm still working on it, and I've been at it a long time. So having not only your individual commitment, but also the support of other people that you trust and ask really good questions can be very, very helpful. So the 5 weeks, I hope, will be a beginning rather than sort of an ending experience.
Thank you, Harry. Again, there's another question about when the next course will be. We can keep this list updated on when we will offer the course again. But again, this particular course that we're hoping to welcome you into will begin in April of this year. There's a question on the size of the cohort. We, at Graham intentionally keep our classes small, so we would hope to run this course with at minimum 8 students, but probably all the way up to 20. We don't want to get too large, but I'd say that a nice intimate cohort where you can build some safety and community amongst the other fellows in the cohort. Any other questions here? I'm seeing that some folks are interested, but there may be some time conflicts, which we understand. Are there any other questions about the program that you might have? Okay. Well, I want to say thank you to you all for joining us today. And Harry, Charlie, Nancy, if you want to share any final goodbyes and gratitudes, we can end the program after those.
Well, gratitude to you, Conway, for all of your help.
Yes, thank you so much.
Such a pleasure.
And it was inspiring to see all of the characters and all of the description of the characters. It's always exciting to see people begin to understand and begin to work on new characters. So thank you for that.
I also just loved the energy, even though it was over Zoom. I could feel the energy and excitement that people were sharing in the chat. So thank you all for that. And of course, thank you, Daniel, for joining us. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. We just got one last question is that, yes, we will send this recording to you all if you have registered for today, so you can reference it for if you have questions or want to review anything. We'll also send the link to the application, and we hope to see your applications and hope that you will join us in the spring. But for now, stay warm, and we hope to see your applications. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye, y'all.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.